Have you ever noticed the man who doesn't react? Someone insults him. He doesn't rush to defend himself. Someone tries to provoke him. He doesn't raise his voice. Someone walks away, hoping he'll chase. He remains still. No begging. No panic. No emotional performance. Just silence. And somehow, that silence feels heavier than anger. Because people are used to emotional noise. They know how to handle shouting. They know how to handle jealousy. They know how to handle desperation. They know how to handle men who lose control. But a man who can feel everything and still refuse to be controlled by it makes people uncomfortable. Because emotionally controlled men are difficult to move. And most people are secretly addicted to moving others. They want a reaction, a look, a reply, a defensive explanation, proof that they still have power over you. But when a man gives them nothing, they begin to feel exposed. Not because he's dangerous in the loud way, but because he's dangerous in the quiet way. Today, we're going to explore the psychology of emotionally controlled men. Why people fear them, why their calm feels intimidating, why their silence creates pressure, and why the man who controls his emotions often controls the room without even trying. Number 1. He cannot be emotionally purchased. Most people have a price. Not always money. Sometimes attention. Sometimes approval. Sometimes affection. Sometimes the fear of being abandoned. Press the right emotional button, and they bend. They over-explain. Apologize too quickly. Chase too hard. Stay in places where they are clearly disrespected. But an emotionally controlled man is different. He may want love, but he does not worship it. He may want respect, but he does not beg for it. He may feel pain, but he does not trade his dignity just to escape it. And that's what unsettles people, because they realize they cannot control him through withdrawal. They cannot control him by becoming cold. They cannot manipulate him with delayed replies, silent treatment, or emotional games. He sees the game, and once a man sees the game loses its power. Number 2. His silence forces people to hear themselves. Most people are not afraid of silence. They're afraid of what silence reveals. When someone attacks you and you attack back, they feel safe. Because now the chaos belongs to both of you. But when they attack you, and you remain calm, suddenly, they are left alone with their own behavior. Their anger looks childish. Their manipulation becomes obvious. Their insecurity turns visible. That's why calm people are often called cold. Because they refuse to join the emotional fire. They become the mirrors standing beside it. And not everyone can survive seeing themselves clearly. A controlled man doesn't need to humiliate anyone. His restraint already does that. Number 3. He does not confuse reaction with strength. A lot of men mistake anger for power. They think shouting means dominance. They think jealousy means love. They think losing control proves they care. But that isn't power. That's emotional leakage. Real power is when your nervous system is burning, but your voice remains steady. When your pride is touched, but your hands remain still. When someone tries to pull you into their storm, and you refuse to enter. That kind of control is rare, because it requires a man to defeat himself first. And that is why people fear it. A man who has mastered his own impulses is far harder to manipulate than a man who has mastered other people. Number 4. He makes insecure people feel unsafe. Not physically, psychologically. Because insecure people survive through emotional control. They test. They provoke. They disappear. They give attention, then take it away. They create small moments of uncertainty just to see if you'll collapse. But when an emotionally controlled man does not collapse, they lose their favorite weapon. Imagine someone checking their phone every few minutes, waiting for him to ask, "Are you mad at me?" But he never asks. Not because he doesn't care, because he has learned the difference between care and surrender. That line terrifies people who depend on emotional power, because now they must communicate honestly. And honest communication becomes unbearable for people who only know how to manipulate through tension. Number 5. He is not easy to impress. An emotionally controlled man does not become blinded by beauty alone. He does not worship charm. He does not confuse confidence with character. He watches how you treat people who cannot benefit you, how you speak when frustrated, how you behave when you don't get what you want, how you handle hearing the word no. He isn't just listening to your words. He's studying your emotional patterns. And that makes fake people nervous, because they can perform for attention, but they cannot perform forever under observation. Sooner or later, the mask gets tired, and a controlled man notices the moment it slips. Number 6. He no longer chases chaos. There was probably a time when he did. A time when he replied too fast, explained too much, stayed awake at night staring at a screen, trying to understand why someone changed. A time when he confused anxiety with love. But something happened. Maybe betrayal. Maybe humiliation. Maybe one night where he finally realized he was losing himself for someone who was never even sure about him. And after that, he changed. Not loudly, quietly. He stopped arguing for basic respect. He stopped begging for clarity. He stopped chasing people who enjoyed being chased. And that version of him scares people, because they can feel he has already survived the very thing they're trying to use against him. You cannot threaten a man with loneliness after he has learned how to sit comfortably beside it. Number 7. His calm exposes weak leadership. In any room, emotional energy spreads. One nervous person can infect the room. One angry person can poison it. One desperate person can lower the standard. But one controlled man can shift the entire atmosphere without saying much. He slows things down. He doesn't panic. He doesn't perform. He doesn't need everyone to like him. And that creates authority. Not the fake kind. Not the loud kind. The kind people feel before they even understand it. Because deep down, humans trust the person who is not easily shaken. In danger, nobody searches for the loudest man. They search for the calmest one. That is ancient psychology. The nervous system recognizes stability as leadership. Number 8. He reminds people of what they lack. This is the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes people don't hate emotionally controlled men because they are arrogant. They hate them because they are disciplined. Because his calm exposes their chaos. His boundaries expose their neediness. His restraint exposes their impulsiveness. His silence exposes their hunger for validation. And instead of confronting that, they call him cold, emotionless, detached, unavailable, dangerous. But often, he is not emotionless. He is simply not emotionally obedient. There is a difference. He feels deeply. He just doesn't hand everyone the remote control. And that is what people fear most. Because an emotionally controlled man cannot be easily owned. Not by attention, not by beauty, not by anger, not by guilt, not by loneliness. He can love you deeply and still walk away the moment the relationship begins costing him his self-respect. That is not cruelty. That is internal order. And in a world addicted to emotional chaos, internal order feels like a threat. So maybe people do not fear controlled men because they are dangerous. Maybe they fear them because they are free. Free from approval. Free from emotional bait. Free from games. Free from the need to prove themselves to people who aren't even honest with themselves. And that kind of freedom makes unstable people panic. Because when they can no longer control your emotions, they are finally forced to confront their own. So let me ask you something. Do people fear emotionally controlled men because they are too cold, or because they are too difficult to manipulate? Write your answer in the comments, because your answer may reveal more about your own emotional control than you realize.